Namo Phat, good morning. Thank you for joining me for our daily practice check-in. Listen, listen, listen. This beautiful sound calls us back to our true home. The fifth mindfulness training. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption. I vow to cultivate good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will ingest only items that preserve peace, well-being, and joy in my body, in my consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of my family and society. I am determined not to use alcohol or any other items that contain toxins, such as certain TV programs, magazines, books, films, and conversations. I'm aware that to damage my body or my consciousness with these poisons is to betray my ancestors, my parents, my society, and future generations. I'll work to transform violence, fear, anger, and confusion in myself and in society by practicing a diet for myself and for society. I understand that a proper diet is crucial for self-transformation and the transformation of society. Our Dharma lesson this morning is Desire as Energy by Ajahn Thiradhammo from his book, Working with the Five Hindrances. As we more clearly understand the conditioned nature of desire, we can see how energizing it can be. Perhaps everything appears gray and dull when you look around, but then you see some especially attractive sight, such as spectacular clematis flowers. Oh, aren't they beautiful? Your whole mood changes and maybe desire arises, either to sustain that stimulating perception or to possess those flowers. Some people get a lot of stimulation out of sense contact, but if we see desire more clearly and objectively as separate from the object of the desire, as just an energy, we can get a wiser perspective on how it arises, what its effect is, and what we can do about it. This requires some degree of understanding and stability within meditation practice, and then we can begin to use this energy. A very practical example is when sexual desire arises. You may know something about the chakra system from Hinduism of 8 psychic energy centers in the body. Sexuality is said to be centered in the lower chakras. If you can separate the desire energy from its source in sexuality, you can then redirect it. Very simply, the energy can be moved from the lower chakras to the higher chakras, up from the sexual center to the heart center, for example. This is one means of literally raising our level of consciousness. We become conscious of the energy in the heart rather than in the genital area. Even if we aren't able to follow this procedure so directly, there are other things we can do to shift the energy once we can distinguish it from its source. Sometimes simple things such as changing our posture can be helpful. Desire is triggered by sense stimulation and then locks on to it if we change the environment in which the stimulation occurred. The desire energy may still be there, but the link to the source is broken and can perhaps be reestablished in a more useful way. For example, if there's strong physical sexual desire, engaging in mental contemplation or verbal discussion, or going into a place like a meditation hall or shrine room can create a more skillful context and cause a shift in energies. There are, of course, quite a few stories that have to do with ways in which people actually work with some of these things. One of the meditation masters in Thailand was visiting Bangkok and happened to notice a very attractive woman. Suddenly sexual desire arose in him, so he immediately went into the meditation hall and sat there for 3 days, meditating most of the time. He didn't eat, just meditated, meditated, meditated. Maybe this is an example of transforming that sexual energy through meditation practice. Within the meditation hall, he had a supportive environment with the Buddha image in front of him, and he succeeded in at least subduing this overpowering sexual desire and became one of the most famous meditation masters in Thailand. Apparently, in his meditation, he had the insight that the woman had been his wife in a former life, so there was still a strong karmic connection. I think the Buddha understood this process of transforming energy because one of the explicit pieces of advice he gave monks is that if they noticed they were sexually attracted to a woman, they should try to see her as their mother, sister, or daughter. This creates a different kind of relationship. Maybe you've heard of the definitions of love in classical Greece, where 3 kinds of love are distinguished: eros, philos, agape. In English, we just say love, but often when people say they've fallen in love, it's more likely they have fallen in sexuality. In classical Greece, however, there's a distinct separation. There's erotic love, or eros, and there's also philos, the love for family, for friends, for comrades. This is quite a different kind of love. Then there is agape, the love of the divine, or spiritual love. When we understand that there are these different kinds of love, how we direct our energy is very significant. Sometimes a feeling of love arises from a close friendship, but then maybe it moves down to the eros level of the lower chakras, whereas if we understand what the processes are, we could raise it up to agape, or spiritual love. Our consciousness has normally been trained to observe objects or things rather than processes or flowing energies. So how do we deal with the way energy moves? What often happens is that it fixes on something. For example, desire energy arises, and before you know it, it focuses on a person who becomes the object of your desire. You may be just relaxing when a memory comes up, triggering desire, but then somebody walks by, and before you know it, you fall in love with them. You dump your desire on the first object that comes along, and because you can't handle this volatile energy of desire, we are so used to dealing with objects that we don't know what to do with volatile energies. They're too hot to handle. Through the development of awareness of bodily sensations, feeling tones, and conditions of mind, as outlined in the exercises and the attendings with mindfulness, we come to see these experiences as flowing processes. In the same way, we see desire as flowing or pulsating energy. Desire is a condition of the mind, an aspect of the constant flow of mental activity. It grows stronger or weaker, but it flows continuously. If you can observe these changing conditions of mind clearly, you begin to see processes rather than always fixing on objects and things. So when we begin to recognize what desire is as a particular energy, we can transform it into a more beneficial energy. For example, sexual desire can be transformed into compassion, an energy of the heart. Most people don't understand their energies and thus have no control over them, so they have to repress or deny the uncomfortable ones, such as their sexual urges, but they eventually begin to leak out, and before long they become displaced or projected in unforeseen or unskillful forms. Similarly with anger, people suppress their anger energy until some likely victim comes along, and then they dump it on them. Through clearly seeing the processive nature of experience, we can learn how to engage skillfully with emotional energies in order to transform them. Otherwise, we end up being unknowingly controlled by them. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for joining me today.